This gripping drama revolves around four men: Doug, James, Albert, and Desmond, who live in a troubled neighborhood of Boston where the motto is simple: get rich or do whatever it takes. The movie kicks off with a bank robbery orchestrated by a group of individuals wearing masks with designs and dreadlocks. They've planned the operation carefully, knowing this is the time when cash deliveries are made. The robbers force a young assistant bank manager to lead them to the vault. Nervous and scared, she struggles to open the safe but eventually manages to compose herself and unlock it. The robbers push her to the ground and begin filling their bags with cash. Meanwhile, a visitor knocks on the locked main entrance. The robbers, distracted by the noise, fail to notice the assistant manager discreetly pressing the alarm button with her foot. Through their communication channels, the robbers overhear that an alarm has been triggered from the bank's address. They confront the head manager, demanding to know if he made the call. He denies it but is met with the end of a rifle. Realizing they need to leave quickly, the robbers pour bleach over everything to erase their traces. They take the assistant manager with them, load her into their van, and drive away. Later, they blindfold her, drop her off on a beach, and order her to walk toward the water. Soon, the police arrive and find the burned remains of the van, which had been stolen shortly before the robbery. The robbers had also doused the van in bleach, leaving no fingerprints or traces behind. The gang gathers to discuss the robbery and divide the stolen money. During their meeting, one of them reveals information about the assistant manager, including the surprising discovery that she lives almost next door to them. They decide to keep an eye on her, and Doug volunteers to take on the task. Meanwhile, federal agents visit the assistant manager who had been taken against her will to collect her fingerprints and ask her some questions, such as whether she tried to get away during her detention or noticed anything unusual. During this time, Doug hands over a share of the money to a florist named Ferdy, who assigns the crew new tasks. Fergie's assistant, nicknamed Rusty, helps coordinate their operations. The next step for the group is to manage the money they obtained, which they do through various channels such as casinos, social events, and horse races. In a bar, Doug reconnects with his former girlfriend, Christo. She struggles with substance issues and generally leads an unstable lifestyle. They talk about their past, share a drink, and later spend the night together. Afterward, they part ways as if nothing happened. Despite his choices, Doug avoids harmful habits, keeps fit, and attends group meetings where participants share personal experiences and discuss fate. Doug begins to follow the assistant manager, Claire, and coincidentally meets her at a laundromat. Introducing himself, he strikes up a conversation and eventually asks her out to dinner. She agrees and, over the course of their meal, shares that the bank where she worked had been robbed and that she had been held captive. Doug subtly asks for details, and Claire reveals that she noticed one of the robbers had a tattoo of the Fighting Irish football team, but didn't tell the authorities because she feared being questioned extensively. She also mentions that she's frequently bothered by people in her neighborhood. Doug takes this information seriously and, along with his friend James, pays a visit masked and armed to the home of one of these individuals. They physically confront him as a warning. Meanwhile, federal agents continue investigating the recent robberies and discover that the bank's alarm system had been tampered with using a hidden device that disabled it. The authorities realize this group is far from ordinary. They pull up a list of employees who work with security systems and identify an interesting suspect: Desmond, who had been conveniently absent from work during all the heists. Meanwhile, Claire is in her garden tending to flowers. Doug tells her about his mother, who left him when he was 6 years old. His father, for some reason, never wanted to look for her. Doug recalls how he made flyers and ran around the neighborhood as a child trying to find her. Later, Doug visits his father in prison to ask the burning question: why didn't he search for his mother? His father explains that she didn't want to be found. Doug and Claire meet again at a street cafe, where Claire shares a story about her younger brother, who passed away from cancer on a sunny day. Ever since, sunny days have reminded her of loss. Claire steps away briefly, and during this time, Doug's friend James joins him at the table and asks who he's spending time with. Claire returns shortly after with some comics, unaware of who James really is. James says goodbye, and Doug pulls him into a hut to hide his neck tattoo. Doug and James later meet to discuss Doug's relationship with Claire. James accuses Doug of losing his mind since Claire is the only witness who could identify them. James also pressures Doug to join a new job robbing an armored truck, but Doug hesitates, pointing out that one of the guards served in the military and they need better preparation. Despite Doug's concerns, James pushes him, and they agree to proceed with a heist on Friday. The gang gathers in their car, listening to police radio frequencies to stay informed. The show begins as they put on masks, ready their weapons, and execute the heist. They ambush the guards, but the driver, who isn't supposed to leave the truck, exits the vehicle and fights back. The gang has no choice but to shoot him and flee quickly. Police receive reports of the heist and pursue the robbers. A fierce gunfight ensues, but despite the overwhelming number of police cars, the gang manages to escape. The next day, the police arrest the entire gang after finding fingerprints at the scene. However, there isn't enough evidence to hold them, so they're released. Doug, acting as if nothing happened, visits Claire and gives her an expensive necklace. He suggests they leave town together since she has already quit her job at the bank. Meanwhile, the police continue their investigation and visit Claire for another round of questioning. They show her a list of suspects, and she spots Doug's name. Realizing the truth, James confronts Doug again about a new heist, saying that Fergie has lined up a big score. Doug refuses, declaring he's out of the game and wants to leave town. He personally visits Fergie to tell him he won't participate and suggests finding someone else. He hands Fergie a bundle of cash, but the florist refuses and reveals dark truths. He was behind the prison mistreatment Doug's father endured. He got Doug's mother addicted to substances leading to her passing, and Doug's father never told him she had died. Fergie also threatens Claire, implying she could meet the same fate. Cornered, Doug agrees to the job on the condition that Claire is left alone. Doug goes to see Claire, but she refuses to talk to him, having figured everything out. The gang begins preparations for the next heist. Fergie gathers everyone and lays out the plan in detail, showing blueprints of the building. The target is the cash room, where all the money from a recent sporting event is stored. Doug assigns James the task of preparing an escape plan, knowing the job will be dangerous. YouTube, the day of the operation arrives, and the crew, disguised as officers, infiltrates the building where the cash room is located. They intimidate the staff by threatening their families, forcing them to unlock the doors. Once inside, the robbers gather all the cash into bags and exit the room, making their way to their getaway vehicle, an ambulance this time. However, Doug grows suspicious and checks one of the exits, only to discover a large number of law enforcement officers and federal agents waiting for them. Realizing escape won't be easy, a confrontation ensues. The Special Forces team throws a device, temporarily stunning the crew. One of them, Desmond, stands up and is immediately struck. The chaos continues, and Albert proposes a diversion. The crew changes into officer uniforms again. While Albert drives the ambulance out of the basement as a distraction, he is met with gunfire and is fatally wounded. Meanwhile, Jem manages to escape while the police and federal agents argue over jurisdiction. An alert informs the agents that the robbers were disguised as officers. A federal agent spots Jen and calls out, "Officer." Jen doesn't respond, prompting the agent to call him by name. Jem opens fire, but the agents quickly surround him. Though Jem shouts that he's surrendering, he is shot and fatally injured. Doug, watching from a distance, heads to Fergie's flower shop. He confronts both Fergie and his assistant, Rusty. Afterward, Doug calls Claire. She asks him to come over, but as Doug observes her house through binoculars, he sees federal agents inside. Initially, he feels betrayed, but Claire uses a coded message about a sunny day to assure him of her loyalty. Doug takes a bus to the station, boards a train, and leaves the city. Later, in her garden, Claire finds a bag with a note and money. Doug's note explains that the money is for her, as she would find better use for it than he ever could. Part of the funds is used to build an ice rink in honor of Doug's mother, Doris MacRay. Doug writes that he is far away but hopes they might meet again, either in this life or the next.